grew up, a mile down the road here, we used to make paper airplanes and throw them off the hayloft, which was kind of funny. That's something we did. Burned up moms typing paper all the time, and we'd modify them, we'd change them, and then, of course, we went through the 80s, and, Mom and Dad were like, don't come back. Whatever you do, don't come back.
The 80s were tough, and the 90s, it was just kind of coming out of that, and they told us all not to come back to the farm, go get a job, go do something else,
Of course, we both wanted to farm. To farm the way we wanted to farm, we knew we were going to have a job. And so I thought, well, I want to be a pilot. I want to be a charter pilot. Ended up graduating from Kansas State with a degree in aviation maintenance.
I always wanted to fly or do something in aviation, but didn't know quite what that was going to be. When my brother came home from college one day and he flew home and I got my first ride and I was like, okay, it's over. That's it, So I was going to do it. I didn't know how or what yet, but some way. I wanted to do something a little different, maybe tie the two together, so I went to college for agronomy.
Scott Heinen, and I'm the co-owner of Heinen Brothers. I'm the older, better-looking brother.
My name's Glenn Heinen. Worked here my whole entire adult career life. Never had a real job. I always like to joke about that.
Got my first gig flying in Ellenwood, Kansas in a airplane that I probably wouldn't walk across the street to look at today. It was pretty tough, and learned a lot, and just decided that it was just better on my own.
He had already kind of started. He was working for an operator in Western Kansas, came back and decided he wanted to start back here. And so, when you're starting out a business like that, times are tough. So he went to the quickest pool of labor he could find, and I worked pretty cheap. So
shotguns and beer, guns and beer. I think is how he got hired.
As we joke about it later on, I sweated my way in, I guess. So.
Summer of '94 is when I moved back. Come back here and talked my father into co-signing a note on a spray plane of all things, and I was 20, probably about 22 years old, and I got a 22-year-old son today, and I think, what the heck was Dad thinking?
Our father helped out on the first bank loan, and he kind of, when we walked out of the bank, he kind of said, well, here you go, good luck, because this is it. So there was no turning back.
I started in the era of the automatic flagman, which was the piece of toilet paper that shot out of the airplane. Well, if you couldn't find that next piece of toilet paper, you couldn't go on.
There was a box that hung on the side of the wing, and you'd hit the trigger and it'd kick out this piece of toilet paper with a piece of cardboard on it, and it would fall in the middle of your swath. You're always looking for that piece of toilet paper. Well, you'd be out there in the middle of a big pasture, and then you see a cow going across the field with the damn thing in its mouth. Or you dropped it somewhere and you couldn't find it. It sucked.
By the end of the day, sitting in a cockpit 112, 113 degrees, and you were looking for that next piece of paper to move on down the road. That was a stressful, long day.
We started out with just one, and I loaded and handled the ground stuff, as I didn't quite have all my licenses and ratings yet. So I continued to work towards that, and then, I ended up buying a plane, and we had two.
It was rather stressful, actually. We didn't have all the fancy stuff that we have today where you could talk on the phone to each other. We had radios, but we would split up. He'd go to Hiawatha and I'd go to Eureka. We didn't really worry about each other because we were too young to probably worry, but we didn't know where each other was all day long either. So it was a lot different world back then.
It just continually kept building. As you gained more experience, you got better at your craft, the word kind of traveled, and it just built organically like that.
We hit a lick at first, and then we started getting into more technical stuff and bigger stuff in the Flint Hills, and we had some issues in there them years where everything wasn't rosy and perfect because we didn't quite understand how to swath those airplanes on those big fields. So we had some skips and some things that just didn't go our way, and we had to go back and fix all that. And as we fixed it, and the reputation grew that they may not know what they're doing, but they fixed it. So that was good for us, and we learned pretty quickly after that.
As we started out, the gentlemen that were probably our age now, as 10 years or 20 years came down the road, those guys that we knew that kind of helped us get started, they wanted to retire.
A gentleman by the name of Kermit Carnes in Onega, he was quite a cowboy. Him and an older gentleman by the name of Harold Thompson in Wymore. I tell my wife all the time, I think them two old men what kept us alive. It wasn't like you could get on YouTube or Google something. You had to either scare the heck out of yourself or you had to ask somebody something, and that wait till evening and pick the phone up and actually call somebody that you trusted to give you the right answer if you didn't know what you were doing.
And so some of the good friendships we made over time with those guys allowed us to step in and buy their businesses and expand on things that way.
You got to make your own luck. I'd rather be lucky than good, but you got to make your own luck. And you know, just one thing fell into place, and then another thing fell into place, and this person retired, or we had a chance to move into this airport because somebody else decided that they weren't going to go on that year. And we kind of got to a spot in 07, 08 where we realized we had way too much equipment sitting here in this 36 highway corridor, and that's when the business model changed. It was Christmas Day. Glenn and I were standing out here in the hangar, and I said, you know what, if we drought, this is going to be horrible. We had a 45-day window there where we were spraying a lot of corn, and so we were bringing in a lot of help. We were sitting here looking at 7 airplanes in the hangar to run on a 45-day run, and otherwise it was just me and him flying the other 2. I said, we're bringing all this help in from Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana. I said, why don't we just go down there and see who's retiring? Why wouldn't we just buy them out? So we decided we'll just move our equipment south and hire pilots to bring our newer stuff north, and that's how that started. That was the beginning of a really good thing, because we also got into different crops: rice, cotton, huge amount of grassland down in Oklahoma. So
There's a lot of strategic picking. What's going to span the gap of the calendar year? What's our market? What's a crop that we're not into? Where can we diversify at? What other crop can we use to make sure that everything rolls for the next year? So that kind of drives the growth.
So within 15 months, we'd established a business in southeastern Oklahoma in the cotton country. Within a year after that, we were in northeastern Louisiana doing both cotton and rice, as well as corn and beans. In 2016, we did a number of government contracts. That was the first year that we crossed the 1 million acre mark. In 2019, we also had gotten involved in 2 locations in Idaho. It was in 2019 that we crossed 2 million acres for the first time, and we have done it again this year. It's given us the opportunity to avoid the catastrophes of droughts as we've had here a couple times in the last 3 years, and have continued to grow.
So things just kind of dominoed, but they all kind of fit this spot in the United States where we wanted to be, and it worked very good to move that equipment north to south, south to north, and back and forth. So, and we were already kind of in the edge of those trade territories.
When I came here in 2013, Scott and Glenn owned 9 airplanes. I think today we're up around 23, 24. They're go-getters, and they just want to grow, and they keep buying other locations and more equipment and more people, and it just keeps growing.
we never set out to be any more than a flying service in our local area. The success of this company is not Glenn and I, or Glenn and our wives and I. It is actually the employees.
We can conquer the world if we have the right people, but if we don't, it's not worth it. We won't work. Finding people who love their job, want to be a part of it, love the industry they're in, and that passion leads over through all things they do, and it shows in our company what we bring to the table.
You just still want to do the same thing you set out to do when you were young. You still want to do a good job for everybody, and make sure your growers are taken care of, and still got to stay cognizant of the things that got you to the dance.
Anybody can show up with the cheapest price on a doorstep, but Scott and Glenn have such high standards for what they want to bring out to our customer base, and that evolves from the aerial business. Airplanes have to be taken down to the last nut and bolt and inspected, and everything has to be perfect or they're not allowed to fly. You don't find that in normal retail facilities.
It's been a fast 20 years, actually, 28. So this year was my 30th class reunion. So, it just flew by. I don't even know where it went, but there's been some trials and tribulations along the way, but I don't know that I've really changed much. It's just been fun industry to be involved with.